Hello and welcome to the 7th Annual Indonesia Economic Forum. We are honored to have speakers and participants from across the world, including the United States, Australia, India, Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, and of course here in Indonesia. For the first time, the Indonesia Economic Forum is a truly global event, broadcasting out of Jakarta, but reaching most major regions in the world. I can safely say that the Indonesia Economic Forum is the largest online virtual conference on Indonesia.
We live in challenging phase of history. We witnesses the world undergoing an unprecedented situation. The COVID-19 pandemic is the most critical global health catastrophe.
In recent months, the government of Indonesia has been making commendable progress on placing a higher focus and priority in attracting manufacturing investments. What remains to be seen is the impact of the US election outcome and what actions the new Biden's administration will take. It will, of course, have an impact on the world economy, which in turn will impact us in Indonesia. And in the backdrop of it all, we have recently signed a Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP. I salute the government of Indonesia for initiating this and persevering for so many years to come to this point.
In the China side, structurally, the Chinese have actually made all the right investments, done many of the right things, and certainly the signing of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership is a big booster, I think, to the regional economy and so on and so forth. So I think China will continue to do well in terms of its economic growth and development. And just to indicate to you how China progresses steadily forward, let me give you one statistic. In the year 2009, 10 years ago, the size of the retail goods market in China was 1.8 trillion and US was 4 trillion, almost double, 10 years ago. But last year, by 2019, China had grown to 6 trillion and US only went up to 5.5 trillion, right? And I think this is going to grow, right? And as a result of that, the economic, in a sense, the structural momentum behind economic growth in China will continue also.
So again, I say RCEP, I think, resonates well with developing economies, mentality. And I think it is, in line with our spirit of wanting to boost investments at the rate that China is, moving the needle so fast and so quickly in terms of its domestic consumptive propensity.
How AI, machine learning, and robotics could impact low-skilled labor, especially in countries like Indonesia, as manufacturing companies automate. You mentioned that earlier in your early part of the presentation, but I think it's also a good way to close because this is where countries like Indonesia really grapple with in terms of the future work. Right. It's not a high skill level because those people can look after themselves. It's really the low skill. How do you transition? What kind of skills should they be looking to acquire?
Yeah, good. I think it's a good question. And I think that, the skills that are important are very foundational, right? Their literacy, their numeracy, right? Their, basic mathematics and analytic and reasoning capability. And then those need to be complemented by development policies that attract investment, that build on infrastructure. And I agree that there are certain types of work that it's hard to see that people will be competitive in them long term. I do think a lot of work in textiles, for example, or sewing and will eventually be automated. And so it is true. Now, it's still the case, even where that's true, there will still be physical factories, and there'll still be people who work, and maintain those machines, who provide the transportation service, the electrification, right, the materials moving, and so on. So I don't think that's all going to go away. And where countries build those things is an open question.
And in 2019, Indonesia's total non-oil and gas export to RCEP region represent 56.51% of Indonesia's total export to the world, which is 84.4 billion US dollar. So it is actually showing to the rest of the world the importance of open and rule-based trading system that RCEP, particularly Indonesia, is attached to. And I guess this is the moment of how multilateralism, particularly regional relations, regional blocks, and also I can say that compared to other regions in the world, Southeast Asia is very attractive.
The pandemic has made explicit the latent fragilities in our increasingly complex and often opaque global value chains. And this has come at a time in which the global public discourse around the international economy has substantially shifted from neoliberal triumphalism to one that emphasizes the societal and national security costs of global exchange.
Indonesia is highly committed in combating climate change. The country is highly vulnerable to the adverse impacts of climate change and understands that it should respond effectively and in a more systematic way.
Indonesia has a vision to be a high-income country in 2045. However, currently, Indonesia is struggling to escape from the middle-income trap. Furthermore, Indonesia's economy depends mostly on the use of natural resources, which is limited and therefore needs to be left out gradually. It means that we need to shift into sustainable concept to reduce the use of waste as well as to give more added value. To the Indonesia innovation products, in order to push economic growth, this can only be done through the enhancement of technology and innovation.
That I do want to keep my opening remarks short, and I want to just frame this conversation for how the Victorian government views our relationship with Indonesia and the role of education as the driving point for our success. As a Commissioner for Victoria, my task is to focus on trade, investment, and education. And that means that we get to put education at the heart of both of those elements of trade and investment. And we get to work in partnership, as we are today, to develop new solutions, new ways of working, and hopefully improved outcomes for our citizens and our businesses.
I think if you look at the pandemic and the slowdown in the economy, one sectors that continue to be promising and growing is the agricultural sectors in Indonesia and other parts of the world. We are seeing a lot of challenges when it comes to providing food to our populations. We are seeing that during this pandemic, food is the new internet.
Also, by 2023, the government intends that national data center be adequately operated to support the enhancement of e-governance service and data integration initiative. Complementarily, the government also aims to improve the process of bureaucratic reforms and further facilitate with the necessary digital regulation on personal data protection and other related issues.
Years is that if we as a country want to really excel and evolve strongly here, being one of the most capable digital nations in the world, then we have to have a good digital leadership. And meaning to say, we have a lot of digital initiatives in Indonesia ongoing. But frankly speaking, for me personally, I wish that in the last cabinet, we would see something like a digital ministry, which is not the same like Cominfo.
Yeah. So I think there's an interesting point and a trend emerging where the investments coming into Indonesia really are moving away from natural resources towards services, and really the services sector is poised to grow very quickly going forward. What's your perspective on that? Not just from the American perspective, but global investors looking at Indonesia, looking at ASEAN. Can us, as Ambassador Gurjit also mentioned, that Indonesia could be the manufacturing gateway for RCEP now, and of course for ASEAN. Do investors see that too?
Well, I think those are very good observations, and definitely services are the future. I think several of the ambassador pointed it out. I think George also pointed it out. Really, and what we're seeing, where we're seeing Indonesia move quickly is in the new sectors, which are not well regulated and not overly regulated, I should say, and they don't. There's not much presence of state-owned enterprises, and this is not a coincidence. This is what has held Indonesia back in the manufacturing space. It's held it back in the infrastructure space. It's one reason Indonesia doesn't have large private sector construction companies and so on. So the areas that are moving quickly are the ones that are furthest from the SOEs. And I think that's a fact that has to be stated. The SOEs are a burden on Indonesia.
On that note, we'd like to close the Indonesia Economic Forum. For the 7th Annual Indonesia Economic Forum, we've had great 3 days, some very, very inspiring, some very thought-provoking discussions. We've had a broad range of issues discussed over the 3 days. Again, I'd like to thank each and every one of you who have joined us, who have participated, who have sent us questions. A big, big thank you for making this probably the best Indonesia Economic Forum so far.